For right now, let's talk about Elizabeth Báthory. Her last name's spelled Báthory, for anyone who wants to look it up at home, Báthory, but it's Báthory. She's Hungarian. She's weird like that.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
So anyway, she lived in the 16th century, Renaissance era, sort of Black Death was winding down, paintings of naked people were winding up, sort of that.
It was a beautiful time to be alive.
Maybe not so much for some people.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was born into an intensely noble family. Her uncle was king of Poland. Her parents had very high positions in the Hungarian bureaucracy, so she was untouchable politically. And so eventually she got married to this dude who she was actually of higher rank in terms of the nobility than she was, so she kept her own last name, Báthory. Anyway, she's married to this dude. She goes off to his castle to live with him, but before too long, he goes off to fight the Turks, because that was what you did when you were Hungarian at the time. And so she was kind of left in charge of the castle and the land and all of that stuff because her husband wasn't around. And so for a woman, she had kind of unprecedented political power, which is why it's unfortunate that what she chose to do with that power was to recruit young women, well, girls, really, by modern standards, from nearby villages and bring them into the castle as, like, servants, and then she would torture them in various ways. At first, it was bring them outside in the winter and force them to lie naked in the snow. Then she'd pour cold water over them so that they would freeze to death, basically, and crystallize into statues. And then in the summer, she would bring them out into the fields and strip them naked, cover them in honey, and leave them to be eaten by insects. So this was kind of a seasonal thing for her.
Seasonal thing.
Well, it really was. You know, you did it on the hottest and the coldest days, but
it passes the time while the husband's at war.
Literally, yes.
Yeah.
So that kind of went on for a while. Eventually, her husband died, and she sort of lapsed into a deep depression, and around that time, the torture appeared to have escalated. She, maybe apocryphally, this didn't really come up until after she was already dead, so it's unknown if this is totally true, but she may have believed that human blood could keep her young and healthy forever. So she would have young girls, again, sent to her quarters, and she would cut, bite, and burn them with hot metal. And again, possibly apocryphally, bathe in their blood to keep her skin rich and luscious, which is...
Right, that's why the spelling of her last name is so notable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bath is literally in it.
Right,
And that's where the nickname Blood Countess comes from. So, this went on for 30 years. Right.
Whoa.
Eventually, the nearby villages were entirely depleted of suitable candidates for her debauchery, or debauchery, more like. Okay,
Right,
let's move on. So she started to prey on girls who were sort of in the lowest order of nobility, and people didn't like that. She started, like, abducting them and so forth. And, well, she had her people do it.
Right.
Of course, she tortured these people personally in many cases, but obviously a lot of the legwork was being done by her team of servants. So anyway, eventually, once she started doing that, it wasn't too long before the prince dispatched some people to find out why is everyone going missing at this castle. And so they went to the castle, and the jig was sort of up, because they found charred bones in the fireplaces, they found survivors and mutilated half-dead victims, and in the end, some 300 people came to testify against her.
Holy smokes.
And there was a big trial, and they found that basically she had killed some 80 people,
Wow.
And all of her helpers were sentenced to death. She was not sentenced to anything, because she was, in that time, she basically couldn't be prosecuted, no matter what she did. Instead, she was sent to her chambers, which were bricked up, so she couldn't leave. So she just lived the last 4 years of her life in a couple of rooms, and eventually she died at the age of 54. Now, one notable detail also is that during the trial, many of the people who accused her were also people who were themselves later executed. One of them, who was sort of her right-hand person, stated that they found a diary in her room that had the names of all the people she had killed and the way she had done it, and of course, horrifying details extrapolated on, so on and so forth. But what's interesting is that in the diary, there were not 80 names, there were 650 names.
Well, in order to deplete the townspeople, I mean...
Yeah, so it's actually not known how many people she killed. It's thought maybe 80, maybe almost 700, maybe somewhere in between there. So... That
is absolutely wild, man. And just what is wrong with the Hungarians? Wasn't Vlad the Impaler one? I think it was a Hungarian.
Yeah, I don't know. He might have been.
For you Hungarians out there, I mean that historically, you know, like what's wrong with the British? What's wrong with the Hungarians? Yeah.
Exactly.
But, yeah. That's wild.
Freaky stuff. The castle is still there. It's not known exactly where she was buried, because another fun detail, they buried her in a nearby church, and then the people in that town went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We don't want the blood countess in our graveyard, so it's not known what happened to her body.
Right.
There's no grave or anything. They might have dumped her in a ditch. Who knows?
Yeah, it's just wild. Especially like, you know, Hungary. You know, that's the sort of country during that time that I imagine tons of torches and people storming the castle and burning it down.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? But apparently,
so
they didn't.
There's some thought that she might have inspired, like, Dracula and Carmilla, maybe in some particulars. That's not really proven or even really provable, but there's...
I would think that it did. I mean, especially,
the idea of the pure evil, like, Hungarian noble who, like, bites and drinks the blood and eats the flesh of servants, which she did.
Yeah. And Vlad Tepes, I mean, he was Hungarian. I mean, Transylvania is there, isn't it? Or Romanian, maybe?
Yeah, I thought he was Romanian,
yeah,
but Eastern Europe.
Yeah, it's all weird out there.
Yeah.
Weird and murdery out there.
Too much paprika and murder.
Yeah. My mother-in-law makes Hungarian goulash, though, and it's really good.
So it all happened.
It wasn't all bad. Yeah, it wasn't all bad. Yeah, that is absolutely crazy. You know, I was telling you before this that the only thing that I ever read about her was a historical fiction novel where she made the statues out of the frozen people, and then you're all, oh no, that happened.
Yeah, you were saying, I'm sure that's not how it really went. Actually, probably that's how it went.
So what do you think her motivation was?
Yeah, so after she died, a bunch of rumors kind of swirled around her, and they made her out to be sort of more supernatural and occult, and that's kind of where her bathing in blood idea came from.
Right.
That didn't actually come up at the trial, so it's not known whether that really happened. But the idea that she was bathing in blood to, like, stay young and beautiful, that was sort of ascribed to her later and may not have been her motivation. Right. Although worth noting, she may have had epilepsy, and one of the treatments for epilepsy at the time was to have your lips smeared with the blood of someone who doesn't have it. So it might have been that she thought, hey, a little blood does the trick. Let's try a lot of blood.
That's science.
That is science. But I imagine it was just sadistic, cannibalistic, you know.
Crazy, right.
Yeah, not unlike some of the other serial killers we may talk about
in
this show.